All right, we are back.
We're back.
This is our review of
Yep.
Nobilis. Third edition, I believe, is what we were playing.
Yes.
Such as it will be, yes, this is the third edition of Nobilis. God help us if we ever went backwards in time. I've never even read them.
I don't want to.
I don't have one.
I'm not going
Oh my god, I didn't
to.
even realize this was third edition.
Oh god.
So that's an intro to the review. So what is Nobilis? That's what we're here going to discuss for 2 hours. But in short, it is a game where you are mortals who have been made into god embodiments of concepts.
You're a
very
gal.
specific concept. So that could be anything from something awesome, like large scale, you are the god of beauty, or change, or dream stories, menial labor, or it can be you are the god of peanut butter, and that is your godhood.
Any concept that you can think of, basically you can embody it as a mortal who is now also that. In terms,
so there's a lot of ideas.
Yeah,
it's a very cool concept for a game. I am absolutely in love with you get to be the god of a thing, whatever that thing is.
Figuring out what it is, grappling with entities that are trying to destroy reality and therefore it and you as a part of that. And playing with the definitions of what that concept means.
This all sounds super heady and not really grounded in actual what do you do in the game, what's the game about, but that's what it is.
That's what the game is. What do you do in the game is another question, I think.
So
that was a much more difficult question to
I
answer.
would say again, most of the time there are three things to do in the game: free role play, throwing numbers at each other, not dice, just flat numbers, and looking up rules as to how things work.
If we want to break those down in percentages, it's probably like 10%, 10%, 80%. Like 80%
we did not spend 80% of our time looking up how things work. We would not have gotten if...
I was looking at the rules to figure out how to do the cool thing I wanted to do next. It was in the background all the time. 10-10-80 seems right.
I just looked at my...
Yeah, I just had my chart.
Difficulty chart that I had to build myself.
Yeah, so... character creation is...
weird.
Interesting.
Sure.
Because there's multiple different individual, separate things that you create for your character.
And again, this is a diceless game, and so it's not really a game where you have things like stats of strength and dex and stuff like that. You do kind of have stats, but they're a lot more abstract.
They're a lot more static, I would say.
Well, they're things like persona, domain.
You have
the core of the game is free play. But then if someone wants something to happen, they say, and they're in conflict with something, or there's an obstacle that makes it hard, they say, okay, I'm going to commit this number to it. This number can be generated by I have a skill. I want to shoot this enemy. If we're going to go with standard, if you're familiar with other role-playing games, I want to shoot this enemy. I have a shoot skill of 1, so I'm going to commit that 1 to this enemy. I can raise that by spending willpower, or if you're doing a miraculous thing, if you're like the god of guns or something like that, you can also spend miracles to shoot really well. You have points you can use to raise that number above 1. If whatever is opposing you is lower than 1, then you succeed. There isn't any randomness to it. It's just who can generate the highest number wins.
Which was a really cool concept. The difficulty came in figuring out all of the different little additions that you could add to that number, which numbers you were supposed to use, and that's where all of the rule looking up kind of took away from, I want to shoot this gun, that's awesome, here's a number. That's a nice, simple idea, and in execution, it didn't quite pan out like that.
There's too many places to grab a number to probably have a good reference.
And I had less difficulty with it. I think a large part of it is because I played the game before. So I didn't spend a lot of time looking up rules. I did spend some, but I mostly just referred to my own chart. Yeah.
Oh,
are we done?
You look frozen. You look frozen.
Oh, no.
Your eyes were closed like this.
I was considering, like, what should I say next? But I'm like, no, I don't really have anything to say.
Because... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I was just trying to put more structure into the conversation. We were going to go through the 3 questions about what a game is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or what's this game about?
I guess we described the closest we could to that right now.
Yeah, it's about being a weird demigod, I think was the general consensus. Then it was, how does it do it? And it's with the points.
With the point system and the fact that you can do crazy stuff in this game, which fits the weird flavor.
So how it does it is you go through 2 processes. There is one process to create what's called your avatar, your human self, who you were before you were a noble. And the next part is to define your estate, which is the thing you have power over. Both of them are, I'd say, unique systems among the RPGs I've ever played. The avatar system is basically a mind map of your character.
I still have mine
here. And it's built through a process. There is a good process to go through. It's just because the system is trying to encapsulate anything possible, a lot of the choices you make are still up to interpretation. So you get as much definition out of it as you put into it.
Yeah, for being as
it's like a writing exercise.
For having as strong of a flavor as it does, the game is also weirdly generic. It has its own secret world within the world setting, and it's expansive with multiple subcultures and sub-dimensions basically that have their own thing going on. It is most of the book is a setting book, honestly.
And I think that might be what was challenging about it. It kind of masquerades as you can be freedom, you can do whatever, write your own story, set down what's interesting to you. Except the mechanics and what you're given to play with is all very related to the specific setting that the book gives. And so it's almost you are promised freedom, but you actually have a setting here. And it's a bit of a challenging setting to work with because it is so expansive.
For those who would want to, do we think that the mechanics of the game can be separated from the setting? Could you play
I think they can be incredibly streamlined.
World?
Yeah, I do think the core mechanics can be taken out, but I do think when you look at Nobilis with the core mechanics taken out, it really shows that the setting is the whole game. And I think that's what Marissa was saying as far as there's so much setting that any amount of mechanics doesn't change the fact that to play one plays in the Nobilis setting. You can't put it in another setting because that's where the whole game is. Because the mechanics are so open-ended.
And we might want to talk about the presentation of the setting now.
Yes, there would be a challenge in just physically removing the mechanics from the book because it's very challenging to find where they are because there is a beautiful voice and flavor when reading that book. And I kind of do love the little sidebars that give me more information on the setting. There's a great tone, but it also makes it very difficult when I'm trying to look up a rule and see what number can I add to this number. Just because it's set in such a first-person tone that I can't find the mechanic, I can find lore about the mechanic, and within these 5 pages, maybe half a paragraph is the actual mechanic itself.
Zen, what were you going to say?
I was just going to go on to define the setting a little bit since we were talking about it. because the setting is so expansive and it is not, so it uses different pieces of things that people will recognize, right? There are angels, there are devils, there are magisters of light and dark. There are a whole bunch of different concepts. Now,
World
basically,
serpents.
yeah.
It's trying to be a
all of them
mono.
have all of them have touchstones, right? You can understand each individual piece when it's explained to you.
Yeah.
But the conglomeration of them all together and how all the disparate pieces fit, it's not as well defined as it could be in a setting with so many different facets.
It almost feels like the setting's trying to establish a monomyth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a hard concept by itself, regardless of trying to play a game within an artificial monomyth.
Yeah. I don't think the game does an especially good or poor job at that monomyth setting. I think focusing on the court and the noble system that the PCs will presumably be closest to, more than anything else in the setting, therefore gets the greatest detail. Makes the most sense. But I think it could still give more detail and structure to parts of that world.
Yeah, I keep coming back to now, in order for anyone watching this to understand what I'm about to say, there's a little preface. All right, so the PCs play nobles. They are gods of a particular thing. Each clan of PCs, the player characters are part of a familia. They derive their powers from what's called an imperator, who is the conglomeration of all the powers that the PCs have. Now, the main antagonists of the setting are called excrucians. They exist to sort of rip reality away because they come from beyond reality, and they're convinced that reality is getting in the way of something. Even that is a bit unclear as to what the excrucians actually are. But at some point in the book, there's a little blurb about an excrucian that is sort of the author of this book, because there's an excrucian that taught the rules of Nobilis to the author.
Oops.
And
Interesting.
the thing that gets me about Nobilis is that might be the point. That might be why it's sort of disparate and all over the place and hard to understand. It's because the excrucian wanted you to look past it, to see that it's all a lie.
Meta.
I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like that take.
I wouldn't put that past this game.
I absolutely agree. That
stared at
is
it.
very plausible now
but
that you put that in my
practically,
head.
Having tried to sell a game that I wrote to a human being in real life, that is hard enough when my game isn't this insane. Like, that's already a hard sell, and like that's a very cool like headcanon approach, and whether or not that's true or not doesn't change the fact that that's how one can feel about this game, making it impossible to like interact with.
Yeah, I almost feel like
It's as if Lord of the Rings wasn't translated and was in the original Elvish.
it's almost like if your goal was you're basically saying it's like a expectation subversion, right? Like the reason why it is this way is because it was written by an excrucian to get you to look past it, to be like, oh, this is all dumb, right? Is that essentially what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the better way to do that is just write a story instead of a role-playing game.
I do think this would have been almost better as a book than a role-playing game. With like a character that we pay attention to and follow and care about.
Yeah.
I can absolutely see this as a setting for a book. It would be an amazing Alice in Wonderland tale. The
Of Derek.
challenge for me was, again, structure, was being able to pick out the mechanics from the rest of it to make it work. I feel like if I took that out of how many pages was this?
Oh gosh, a lot.
If you just turn all of the mechanics...
370.
Yeah.
370 book pages, I would say about 20 of those were necessary for mechanics.
If you just turn all the mechanics into technobabble, then it works as a book.
Yeah.
Like, not the physical game book for here, because it's like written like a setting manual, as told by a person who heard it from someone else from an evil dimension. But all the mechanics could be technobabble and like kind of a cheesy but fun, highfalutin metaphysical adventure.
Yeah, because
You send someone into the world and you've got your mechanics. Ta-da!
yeah, because I know we mentioned it off the airwaves. But like, if the premise of the game is to take a human, give them godlike powers, and be like, where does your humanity fall in, right? If that's a great story you could tell, but when we played the game, as soon as it's explained, oh yeah, like everything you know is a lie, and like the multiverse is real, blah blah blah. Like my character's like, oh okay, sure, like nothing matters.
I also went
To
for
be
the
fair,
nothing matters
we've
in a
seen
different way.
We've been inundated with multiverses since this game came out.
Yeah.
In terms of culture.
Though again, I actually tried to do that because I think one of the minigame choices was, how do you react to being a god? And I think I picked the option of, I don't know, I'm still getting over with it. And I remember early game trying to mention, like, yes, I'm off in the background practicing powers, figuring out how this works. But I think that one might have been a cohesive, all of you have to have the kind of the same story working towards the same goal. And because we have so much of a scale and so much of an impressively large setting to work within, it's hard to get on the same page with the goal.
Yeah,
especially when you're encouraged to make a unique power set, and it's like, well, my powers only work for this.
Yeah, you're encouraged to make a unique power set, and you're like, who were you before you got these powers? But you getting the powers is like, okay, well, that stuff kind of doesn't matter anymore because I can literally summon demons if I wanted to, right? It's just like
character creation is about who you are. The game itself is character creation is about who you are before you became a noble. Character creation is about who you are after you became a noble and what you can do. And there isn't a lot of direct connectivity between those two in the game mechanically. We can make that through roleplay, but there are no rules for no easy rules for people in our lives who still are going to need us.
Yeah, like even
and that might have been more the intent behind the sub story that you tell through this, right? Because let's remember that the law one of being a noble, thou shalt not love. So anyone in your previous life that you cared for, you can't anymore. That can be highlighted as a point of contention in a type of game that we don't play a lot, right? It could be a very emotionally driven game.
And I think that's the thing. Nobilis is a game that requires very strong player-driven everything.
But it doesn't tell you that. Anywhere, anytime.
It isn't just
there's
player-driven.
No reward reinforcing it.
It is...
Right?
Let's talk about Destiny, because I do not like Destiny. Destiny is a player who writes their story starting with the ending. Now, they can be vague with what that ending is, but Destiny, literally, the fundamental first thing you do in Destiny is, this is how I did X. And you can write
no chance of failure.
Well, it's you don't play to find out what happens in this game. This feels like, speaking of writing a book, this feels like everyone is writing a book together, but in a way where there
make it
are
right-
surprises over how things happen, but not what happens.
Yeah, it's a book. It's a game about the journey to the end, not the end itself.
Mm. Really, the XP was the friends we made along the way.
I mean, that was one of my Destiny that I wrote.
Yeah.
It does still kind of feel like everyone wrote an OC and are trying to, but then my guy does, and
That's kind of
hopefully that comes to a coherent story, but like you have to be your own bumper rails on it. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I agree with everyone's writing a book together, but everyone's writing a book together from across a room while playing a mini game.
This can be taken poorly, and I only partly mean it poorly, but I'm going to be honest.
Go on.
This game
Go on.
feels like everyone, the four of us as players, are writing our own fan fiction of our character in the Nobilis world.
Mm-hmm.
The game itself feels like it's trying to force us together, but only because it's 4 people playing, not 1 people playing separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess if we're going to ask the question, who is this game for? This game is for someone who already has who really wants to like basically play out and both experience and decide a character arc, and just kind of wants to play through that. This could be like the stereotypical like lone survivor in a D&D game, even though it's a party thing. In that game, usually has to break that because they can't really play that out. But usually, people who play those strong like lone people often do so because they have a specific arc in mind for their character that they rely on others to kind of feed into without communicating it.
Basically, if you're the one who plays D&D for 6 months without ever touching the dice, and you want to be gods a little bit, this is the game for you.
Yeah.
But if you play D&D because you actually want to finish the quest, this is not the game for you. You will not finish your quest.
Or finishing your quest is taken for granted, right? Like that's gotta happen.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't matter.
You are not clearing the dungeon. The dungeon has been cleared. How did you do it?
If you don't work towards it in the story, getting XP is literally only possible to apply to, and now I finished my story more off screen.
Yeah. XP is very weird. There is no
recursive
advancement
XP
or
loop?
direct way to get more powerful without just saying, this is how I got more powerful. Basically. But generally speaking, the points you get, Destiny points, you get to skip over chapters in your story and have completed it.
To generate more Destiny.
Yeah. I don't think it made sense to any of us in terms of satisfaction. It did. We understood it, and all of us were like, "Why would we do this?" Maybe again,
I read the words on the page.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not a game about progression. I don't think it's a game about experience.
And storytelling.
And I don't mean experience points. I mean experiential.
Yeah.
I'm glad I played this game.
It's a very raw storytelling game.
I am less glad I looked at the book.
It's not action oriented. Should we bring up the art?
Yep.
I feel
bad bringing up the art. I know the context. Yeah.
Let's mention the art. The art in this book is pulled off a deviant art. I mean, it is straight up.
Middle school too.
But that is because of a hitch that happened during the publishing, right? That is not anyone's fault, really. It's just what had to be.
So,
however, it's hard to say that it doesn't color.
It's 3rd edition. I don't feel like kids glove on that.
It's hard. The art colors your read of the book, especially again with the voice that the book portrays. It diminishes. It makes it feel a little younger than it actually is.
You're right. No, it definitely does. It adds a more juvenile appeal to it. My immediate first reaction upon opening the book is, oh my god, who didn't hire an art director? Like, I get this stuff's hard. Like, I get it's expensive. I have looked at hiring illustrators and then decided, nope. Like, I totally understand. It is a challenge, but it's a challenge that you need to navigate when publishing. And sometimes less is more if you have like a super limited budget, but it definitely colors your read of the whole game.
It does color the read of the whole game.
Especially when you have to do, as we said, continually flip through the book, reading every page in excruciating detail to find the rules. If I have to stare at a weird anime horse head the whole time, it changes how I feel about it.
Yeah, about that. The art we just talked about. The layout could be improved. Part of it's hard to separate the layout from, as we said, the language and like the actual presentation when you are at the right location to read the rules. It's not always clear what they mean. So part of it is language, but also part of it is layout.
So for people that don't want to read the rule book for their games, not for you.
Yeah.
No.
Like, you actually have to want to read it. You can't just, like, look
There
for the
isn't really... there isn't a reference guide anywhere in the book for
and it
shorthand.
doesn't feel fair to just say, I won't read the rules, the GM can tell me what I need to know. Like, yes, if there's one knowledgeable player at the table, they can help, but again, when we created character, we created separate, here's miracle charts for my stuff. The GM doesn't know my miracle chart. I have to be in depth familiar at least with that section of the rules, so you can't just offload that to someone else. Not that I think that's good for playing anyways.
Yeah, so that's the book proper. I am going to say that that thematically the language that flows in this book is, it might not be helpful on a mechanical level. It is evocative.
Yes.
It is poetic. It definitely gets across the terrible whimsy of the setting.
I super loved the, like, kind of going back on what I said about art, like, some parts of this book, the art does work. Like, the actual art, like, there's a weird
There's a
thing
few
in the game
moments
called
of
actual.
very different art. Oh,
The
you mean...
actual
that's what you
art-
mean. Yes.
No, the game term actual art, I really liked. Actually, like I liked the way it worked. It worked with the presentation. Some of that poetic evil language works well for like that specific section. Like, the actual seems spooky. Under the skin is how that section starts. Like, it
It is...
the poetic, like, when it comes together well, the poetic language mixed with the rules, mixed with the, like, MS Paint layout, like, it does send a feeling of, like, you're telling me a spooky story on the internet. Like, this game feels like...
It feels like a creepypasta?
Creepypasta
In a good way.
a little bit, but less creepypasta and more the spirit of, like, internet fan fiction, where the idea is that you are sharing your fantastical stories and how they're connected.
Yeah.
It does have that, like, internet storytelling ethos, and I think that does add a positive lens to the game. It fits within its own setting of, like, storytelling, and does flavor it in, like, a culturally relevant thing for gamers, as in we're literally playing on the internet. I don't think any of us, like, actually write fan fiction, but, like, it's the same kind of concept of, like, this is you share stories in a weird, controlled way with rules that are only kind of sort of in place.
As a
Pulls
book,
that part off.
I would say Nobilis works better than as a game.
Read Nobilis isn't who should play this game? Who should read this book? If you are looking for a really interesting setting, you are one of those people where that matters most to you, don't really care about characters, plot, whatnot, but setting, then read this as a book. And you
Or
will
if you want a weird mind map to, like, create some bizarro characters, look at the character creation.
I would say GMs should read this book.
Absolutely.
Mechanics be damned. There are phenomenal concepts and ideas in here that can be applied to any game. The inspiration factor alone, I think.
And as much as I don't like reading it when I look at the book for as far as like picking rules out of prose, I do like some like weird poetic prose in role-playing games. Like when I have a pile of them at home.
Yeah. It's very different to read the book versus reading the book for a purpose.
Yeah. I do like reading role-playing game books, and there's like a weird poem about unknown beings or your place in the universe just kind of put in the middle of it. Like, that's interesting, and that's like it makes it a good book to like flip through or put aside for this one. But yeah,
as a book in my arsenal as a GM, I love this book. As a game,
How was it to GM? Are you given guidance as a GM?
No.
shocking.
Yeah. So I am given as much guidance as the setting is given, right? Like, I know, having read through the book a few times, and I'm sure I missed major portions of it that were probably really important and could have solved some problems for us. But I delved into the setting as much as I could to figure out, because how I approached GMing on this was, okay, you're all powerful gods, you can do whatever. So we need to focus on the consequences of your actions. Right?
That's probably the right approach.
So let the players do whatever they want. Just make sure that the consequences match up with the setting. That was my imperative as a GM. Actually prepping the game, I mean, there are no stats for anything.
No.
I don't know what an excrucian can actually do. I know imperial miracles exist. Imperators can cast miracles that are way more powerful than anything you guys can do.
But they take months, I remember reading.
Yeah, and on a mechanical level, the fuck, there's no number here. Like, it's just better than you can do. You can't do anything, I guess.
Unless you use level 9 treasure.
Yeah, I mean, that was the part that stumped me a little bit. Thankfully, I also have a copy of Antithesis, which is playing as excrucians. So I just built the excrucians that were going to be featured. That's why I use them.
Excellent. So,
and
if you want a GM, buy a second book.
If you want to GM this game, buy another book.
I have a feeling that actually playing as excrucians would jive better with this group than playing as the nobles.
Oh yeah, dismantling reality and telling it how it's all a lie or wrong or things like that. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, trying. Like, I was making the world metaphysically worse.
You were.
As a noble,
you were doing such a good job that it made all three of us wonder if we were even worth how, like,
that was
you were offsetting the good that the rest of us three were doing.
Like, are we the baddies? Is what I think I said.
Yeah,
like,
the next step would have been to turn karma into a currency that you could just buy with.
Oh, I think that already is the case if you look in the setting.
Yeah, there is. There are different forms of currency that are very weird. But the other thing I did was dive into.
Money. The money was good.
So, yeah, the money was weird. But the author, Jenna Moran, has a website and has done some other works. There's a thing called Hither Be Dragons. There's a webcomic called Chibi X. I read through those to try to get inside the mind of the person that wrote this, to try to get some intent out of it. It helped a little.
I still want to read her other game, the Magical Wish Granting Engine.
Oh, Chubos?
Oh, Chubos.
Yeah, Chubos is the better game in my opinion.
I
want to play that, but I haven't read it yet.
I'm not going to say if I want to play it yet. I definitely want to read Chubos after, like, going through Nobilis. Like, I do want to explore this creator's further work. Like, that's a plus in the plus column if I can hear one.
So if I'm going to compare Chubos to this, and I've never played it, I've only read the book, but Chubos is sort of like you're playing a slice of life kind of anime, the kind of thing. And there's this marvelous wish granting engine that gives you access to something like the miracles that you cast as a noble, but it's very limited.
I definitely want to read it. This has intrigued me enough to want to see what the toned down power system would look like.
Yeah, again, it seems to be very much more emotion focused role play than action oriented, kind of thing. But it fills a niche that up until very recently, I feel, was not filled by the independent writers, right? Like there aren't a lot of emotionally driven role playing games.
That it's definitely coming around with like the research. You're right, like with the emergence of like the modern story game movement and games like Wander Home, which is another diceless slice of life game.
Mm-hmm.
That's very like emotionally driven rather than action oriented.
And remember that this game was published. Let me get a date on this.
2000. I have
This
it
game
now.
was published 2011.
Yep. The previous version, second edition, I'm looking at the preview for it now. It looks very different in terms of the layout and interesting. That was 2002. So 9 years between the second and third edition. Fourth edition is supposedly in progress. So 9 years later, we'll get it 4 years ago.
I'll look at it, and if the art's good, I'll buy it.
I think, though, one of the things that you guys mentioned was the level of power. I was sold on the idea of this game as being, I can be the god of the thing, I can do whatever, which was really cool. The noble system did limit that a bit, and I guess that's probably the biggest reason why I felt disappointed in the mechanics, because it didn't live up to what I was sold on. I wasn't able to do those cool things because I wasn't able to figure out how to do those cool things, so instead I avoided my powers. I tried to roleplay instead, and kind of felt like, drat it, I did something horrible, when I actually had to pull out what did my powers do. Because I had to figure out the rules.
Yeah.
And that could be a failing on me as during character creation, not explaining things well enough. I'm far and away not the best Nobilis GM. I just did it because I was familiar with it, and I had a feeling that Primarch could guide the player side, and I could guide the GM side, having some experience with it, to kind of not leave you guys floating in the void of this game.
I really enjoyed the void of this game. The last session we did, where we kind of hand waved a lot of have mechanics, that was a blast. It's a great storytelling game, and as mentioned, it's a good emotional game. And if you can just play it as gods, it's cool. And it is cool to play a diceless system, which is something I haven't had a chance to do before.
I wonder if this is also an aspect of the game wanting you to sort of pre-write your story. You also, near the beginning of making your character and sort of as you become nobles, you pre-write detailed, comprehensive examples of everything your character can do in terms of miraculous powers. It's not meant to be limited. If you can think of something else that fits, then it fits. But most things you can do are meant to fit on this series of this table, 4 columns, 10 rows of powers and ways you can use them. And part of the game is filling out 2 of them. The other 2 are always the same for everyone.
Yeah, so aspect, which is the stat of your physical body, goes from better than a human, like peak human is 0, and 9 is Atlas holding up the world, right? Like peak god level power, physical and mental power. Then we get into domain, which is how you interact with your estate, the thing you have power over. Persona is sort of how you. It's so hard to describe how.
Yeah. You embody your estate?
How
My interpretation is domain is your estate itself, and persona is you influencing or driving your estate in different ways.
or inflicting your estate on things, or taking it away from things, or
How your estate interacts with the world.
Your estate basically, I don't think we mentioned the term estate before. Your estate is the thing that you're the concept of. So, like fire, for example.
Yeah, like Thor's estate would be lightning.
Thunder. He just uses it wrong all the time.
Yeah. But also nature, if you actually look into Thor. But
Marvel Thor never properly reflects his.
No, very limited. But yeah, so persona is sort of how your estate interacts with the world and how you push it on people and things of that nature. And then you have treasure, which is I've got cool god stuff. I've got a god car. I've got Perseus. Perseus had several treasures, right?
Treasure is Zeus's lightning bolt. It's Mjolnir. It is Odin's magic horse, magic sword, magic robes, I think.
Yeah, it is your divine artifacts.
Oh yeah, the ravens. Yeah, it's your divine artifact or artifacts. I think I had 3 gifts by the end of it, or
were they treasures, or did you?
Oh, I had 1 treasure, and it was my Bureau of Reincarnation.
Yeah, and mine was a jazz club that I took over from someone else.
Treasures can also be people, people that you've imbued with the power of whatever you are.
Yeah.
They can be your prophets,
avatars. Yep.
Oh, we didn't
things of
start
that
any
nature.
cults. This was the game to start
we keep having we keep avoiding cults. I mean, we almost get there.
Next game, we're gonna be a cult.
That would be just breaking the laws outright intentionally, but keeping it secret is what that would be.
But so yeah, that's the basic building blocks of a noble.
Wait, with the powers that we are, that it would have been perfect cult territory. Dream stories change and meaningless labor, like those are the building blocks of a cult.
Oh, they are. Yeah. You're just missing one charismatic leader.
Missed opportunity.
We had that.
That was the Cobra of ceremony.
The Cobra of ceremonies.
Good old COC.
All right. So, of the 3 questions, we know what the game is about. We know how the game tries to accomplish what it's about. I don't know that I can answer the 3rd question of how does your game encourage or reward doing what the game's about.
It requires that you already want to act in a certain way.
Yeah, it doesn't encourage or reward any action.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, other than the accomplishment of your story, which was predetermined.
Yeah. And that is, for us, I think the biggest
sticking point?
Yeah, stumbling block for enjoying this game long term.
I keep wanting to compare that to, and it's the wrong comparison to make, but I keep wanting to compare that to Pendragon.
I haven't played it, but in
Pendragon you
plays of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically following Arthurian legends, and you're sort of like the background characters as the legends play out behind you, and all of the important points happen. They're bound to happen. They have to happen. But it's what you do in the moment that is what the game is about.
The actual plot of the Arthurian legends is the context for your characters to act within, and like it. Yeah, no, that would be an interesting game to play, actually, especially with several different unique mechanics there.
Yeah, Pendragon should probably be on the list as far as us actually trying to do a review podcast show and not just whatever game we want to play next.
It's a balance.
I understand it's a balance, but like on the actually doing the mission statement, Pendragon should be on the list. Do I want to play an Arthurian Legends background character game? Not nearly as much.
I may.
Yeah, that's what stops me.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in that game, you don't actually play one character.
For information.
You play like a family of characters.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You keep making characters.
You keep making characters, and then you play as their descendants, or not necessarily descendants if they weren't old enough to have kids. But there's a whole mechanic for successfully having a family.
You just keep making characters. That's really what it means.
Yep. You erase the end of your name and put the second.
Think like Crusader Kings. There's a bit of Crusader Kings, just less sociopathic.
Yeah, that's fair. As a Crusader Kings player, I can agree.
Is there anything more to say about Nobilis?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
We
should.
I mean,
yeah. Let's
put a button on it.
Yeah, put a button on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is this game for? Do you want to reiterate that, or have we said enough? Like,
I think you have to dig through the whole thing, just like every mechanic in the game.
Are we going to give it a rating, or are it the closest esoteric sentence it deserves to a rating?
I'm trying to find a picture that sums up my feelings from within the book.
While you do that, I'll just say that I feel like a better way to go about the concept of this game and what it feels like this game's trying to do is, I know we mentioned it off the air again, but like you start as a human and you start getting noble powers, and your character arc is, how does this affect my life? And then once you get to like be able to do all the noble powers, you're fine, right? It's like the journey of getting to godhood. Like, what does that do to a person, right? I feel like that'd be a much more interesting game. You can keep all the setting, but that would give you like reasons to, like you have character advancement, right? They would encourage that. Yeah, just there's a way to do it, but it'd be a little work.
Yeah, I think if you played, so if you played Bleach in this setting, like you were Ichigo, right? You became the Soul Reaper. You got more powerful. Like,
yeah, I would play the hell out of that. Are you kidding me?
You need to rebuild the game from the ground up because the game isn't interested directly in who's more powerful.
Right.
Now, there's no mechanics to help with that. It's.
Oh, your magic sword has your estate. Like that's your estate, your magic sword, and then you slowly unlock the power of burgers.
Specific sword.
Yeah, and then you slowly unlock the power of burgers, and your sword gets bigger and spatula-y or whatever.
Suddenly, Zanpakuto is McDonald's.
So that is a fitting end to our talk on Nobilis.
I found my review picture. It's the picture of Lord Entropy on page 17, where he's talking to a guy who I think has to pee while playing basketball.
I will give this the rigging out of a brain sponge. The first drop of the water wrung out of a brain sponge.
I always give my games numbers because I naturally think on 1 to 10 scale. This seems like the correct game to break it because I literally can't think and fit a number into this game.
There's so much to say about it.
Because it keeps waffling from high when I think of one thing to low when I think of another, and I can't do it. So that's my rating.
And all I will say is Nobilis is a game I will never forget and never be able to stop thinking about, for better and for worse.
I forgot the best part. the game master's called the Hollyhock God, apropos of nothing.
It's
in the
on
game.
the stream overlay. That's right
I
above
know,
Zen's
why?
head.
We didn't even cover that.
Apropos of nothing else in the game,
Do we even know
except
what the
for, I
Hollyhock
guess,
God
the
is?
flower commentary and character creation.
Speaking of which, I can confirm there is a Hollyhock God section in 2nd edition Nobilis.
But not 3rd edition.
Not 3rd edition.
Not third.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah.
It's 7 pages long, but that's still 7 pages more than we got.
That's infinity% more than what we have.
I gotta check something. What is the meaning of hollyhock? Like, what is
Plant.
no, but hollyhocks have like flowers have meanings in things of that nature.
Is it toxic?
It represents fertility and fruitfulness.
Mhm.
Okay then.
Did that
That
feel
doesn't-
like just descriptive
The
of
cycle
Game
of
Master?
life, rebirth, and fertility.
That
It's
doesn't
fine.
help.
Fertility of imagination.
I was looking for meaning where there is none, and that is my
That is
my
Nobilis.
final word on Nobilis.
Perfect. All right. Well, this was our fastest review yet. We should review more games like this.
Oh my god, I was like less than an hour.
We will be back next week with
Session 0?
Session 0 of... Because I don't think we've announced it yet.
It's the Wicked Ones, right?
You're playing Wicked
Yeah.
Ones.
I should really know.
Yes. You'll
You're
be
running
jamming
to
it for us.
know.
Where we will be little dungeon denizens ready to destroy the mortal realm.
Yeah, you're the bad guys. We're gonna run a dungeon.
Yeah, it's
We're
Dungeon
gonna
Keeper,
kill
the
all
role-playing game.
adventurers that enter our dungeon. That's the whole thing.
Oh man.
We
Do I
harass
do a
town.
voice?
I have
if you do
all of
voice,
us
you're
need
stuck-
barrel
voices.
of voices that I might pull out.
If you do a voice, you're stuck with it. So
I'm not doing my Mickey Mouse voice.
Unless
Don't
you're
worry.
crazy,
I
you can change midstream. Just make your character insane.
Yeah.
I will not to get too much into the mechanics of it. One of my favorite mechanics is that you can't talk to the good guys.
They speak a different language.
Like adventurers that enter your dungeon cannot be reasoned with because you sound like a monster to them no matter what you say.
you got
And
like
they
6
sound like
words in
Charlie
total
Cook.
if
Yeah,
you
so you just
really
can't-
try. But yeah.
You just can't communicate with them. It's
There
great.
is one playbook that allows you limited communication.
Oh yeah, limited. You get words.
You get like
You
6
have to
words at
you
most.
have to unlock words one by one if you want to say anything to them.
Yeah.
It's great. It makes you fight the adventurers.
Personally, I really like the drawing mechanics. You draw. We might as well be reviewing the game before we played it, but yeah,
We're
we
excited for
draw the
dungeon
dungeon, and how we draw it does matter. So we will have probably set up a shared drawing space that'll show the dungeon and everything like that. But we'll be back next week,
Discussion
assuming
with
that real life doesn't decide to slap us in the face again.
Yeah.
To create our characters, create our initial dungeon, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I should look at that.
Yes.
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Farewell.